Hi there, Andrei here. You spend a lot of hours in meetings, and when the deadline of your project comes, you find yourself saying, "This isn't what I was expecting." I've been there, and I think every business owner has been there. So, how do you make sure the team fully understands your idea and your expectations? Let's take a look at how much time we really spend in meetings. On average, an executive spends 23 hours per week in meetings. This means that you spend more than half of your working hours in meetings. Now that we know how much time we spend in meetings, let's see how effective the meetings are. There are two main issues when it comes to meeting effectiveness. The first one is the people. 9 out of 10 people daydream during a meeting, and 73% of people do other work during the meeting. The second problem is the moderator. 25% of meetings are spent discussing irrelevant issues. 75% of the people have not received formal training on how to conduct a meeting. There is no surprise that half of the people find meetings unproductive. David Grady, in Who Stole My Calendar TED Talk, stated that we have a global problem with meetings. And that's true. Everyone, at least once, was in a bad or unnecessary meeting. The good news, though, is that the cure is right here in our hands. So let me tell you a story about a client I had such horrible meetings that half of the time, to be honest, I didn't know what we were talking about. My client's name is David. He's an entrepreneur with experience in marketing and sales and has technology as a hobby. One day, he got in touch with me and told me about an idea he had, a disruptive software as a service web app. He caught my interest and I scheduled a 2-hour meeting with him to have a more in-depth talk about his idea. For our meeting, I asked David to write a list of core features of his app and to describe in a few words how the users will use his app. The day of our first meeting came and David was unprepared. He reassured me that even though he didn't have the documents I asked for, he had everything about his idea in his head. 5 hours passed and we managed to throw together an initial briefing. David was happy. His idea was starting to take shape. I, on the other hand, was exhausted and had to postpone all my meetings for that day. David and I went over the formalities and started working on his idea. During the following weeks, I scheduled a weekly meeting with David and the dev team for a status update. The weekly meetings had two objectives. The first one was to give David a weekly update about the work we did in the previous week, and the second one was to give David the chance to tell us what features weren't implemented as he expected. This way, we could have made changes to reach the expected outcome. Also, if any of the unimplemented features became irrelevant, David had the chance to tell us so. Every meeting, David was happy about the progress we were making. In less than 45 minutes, we finished going through the list of features that we implemented. The remaining hour was spent with David talking about the features that he wanted in his app. A couple of weeks before the deadline, David requested a short private meeting with me. He was disappointed with the project because it didn't come out as he imagined. He pointed out that there are a lot of improvements that could be made, that some features were missing, and that some features weren't needed anymore. I was caught off guard. David gave us positive feedback during the development phase, so why was he disappointed with the outcome just a few weeks before the deadline? There was little time to waste, and we agreed that the dev team will do extra hours to squeeze in crucial changes before the deadline, and because we couldn't fit in everything, we agreed to have another release in the near future. It wasn't really a nightmare, but it wasn't far from becoming one. David had to release an app that he wasn't happy about, and I, together with the devs, had to do extra hours. At this point, I knew I couldn't make the same mistakes a second time around, and I had to identify what the issues were. After I read the briefing so many times that I learned it by heart and went to all the conversations David and I had, I identified two main issues with the work style we had. The first one was that David wasn't prepared for any weekly meeting. He had to go through the completed tasks and give us feedback on them, but he didn't. This behavior was reinforced right from the very first meeting. Then, David came unprepared, but still we managed to have an initial briefing. He took for granted that this is how we will work together and made a habit out of it. The second issue was that I never checked if David actually reviewed our completed tasks every week. Every meeting, David gave us positive feedback, and that was a red flag we didn't notice. Moreover, I ignored his chatter about the featured versions of the app. From this point on, everything was straightforward. David did prepare for every weekly meeting. I, on the other hand, made sure that David gave us real feedback on every completed task, and I paid more attention to his chatter about future versions of his app. The second release went much smoother and David was genuinely happy about the results. I can't lie, there were issues even in the second release, as there are in any project, but David's expectations were met, and in my book, that's a win. The main takeaway from this story is that you, the creator and the main driver of the project, are expected to work shoulder to shoulder with the dev team. Imagine your project as a ship. The developers are the sailors. They make sure your ship keeps moving forward. You, as the captain of the ship, must make sure you steer them in the right direction. You can't do that without checking the map and the compass from time to time, can you? Leaving the RAM aside, make sure you always tell your development team precisely what you want and what your expectations are. This way, the meetings will be more effective, and by the end of the project, they won't feel like a waste of time anymore. In the book, The Story of Philosophy, published in 1926, Will Durant, the author, tried to capture in his own words a certain Aristotelian sentiment. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So, with that in mind, what I encourage you to do is to take everything I told you and apply it to your next meeting. Make a habit out of it. Sooner than you might think, your meeting's effectiveness will improve, and you'll be one step closer to your project's success. If you want to talk more about the subject, schedule a call with me using the link in the description. And as always, thanks for watching. There are two main problems with meeting effectiveness. David Grady, in his
What?
I was caught off guard. Chiar am fost caught off guard. Oh yes, focus. I can do it if I focus. 25% of the meetings are spent discussing irrelevant issues, and 75% of the blah 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 is blah blah blah. Choo!